Hi guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Lots of scrim talk over the last couple of days. The streams are back live, especially from some of the challenger teams, and we are seeing many pro teams have a very difficult time against many of the top challengers rosters, even after a pretty mega break over the Christmas going into New Year period. We've seen Carolina Ravens, the #1 team in the entire league yesterday, getting slammed back-to-back by a couple of challenger teams. The same fate, it seems, is continuing for many of the other pro teams as well. Are these pro teams not taking it so seriously? Are they approaching the practice in a different way in terms of what they want to get out of it? But also, what about FaZe in this whole discussion? Sure, maybe some of the other teams might struggle in scrims, but FaZe have been known for years to be the scrim dominant team, and as it stands, it's not looking so good. Very much enjoy to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Some funny clips going down here. Thought this was cool from Hitch as well. He put this out yesterday. 10 years now with OpTic from where he started. Everything that he's done with the organization, of course, still there to the present day. And, you know, bagging the drums and all that at the most recent World Championship success. This I thought was interesting from iLLeY, just because I've been keeping an eye on this over the last few days, the iLLeY Huke Shotzzy dynamics. I don't know who tweeted this out, but iLLeY was looking for a challenge. It was like, look, me and Huke run it, how much you want to play for. So yeah, it's cool to see those guys back in action, of course. I guess the question in the CDL right now is, to some degree, what's going to be the next change? OpTic have made it a shocking change that we didn't see coming before the season has really even got underway. The season, I would say, properly starts. We've had a bit of a teaser. The season properly starts in the minor tournament in a week or so's time, basically. At the start of January, I think it's the 10th of January, that gets back underway. And people are wondering what's going to be the first team to make a change, who's going to come in instead. iLLeY is definitely in the conversation. There are other great names though as well. I know that Johnny's been throwing in challengers among others, and we'll see some other notable names here in a few minutes time that have been slamming some pro teams that might be on the radar as well. Just feels to me right now this league is highly unpredictable, and the game itself, there might be some inconsistencies, sure, but a lot of these pro teams have been formed either relatively well or even some of the top teams are struggling, so it's difficult to argue where the CDL power rankings presently lie, and especially when we see some of these scrim results, definitely paints a picture of some of these teams might well need a change, especially from some of the challengers guys to potentially come in instead. iLLeY is going to be in that conversation as a world champion, and we know that of course he's got lots of history with Huke and Shotzzy and those guys, so he's going to be in the conversation for sure. Whether he is, you know, good enough at this game or which teams might want to consider really, because look, if Pred is available, a team like Cloud9 will have to have him on the radar, and of course he seems to suggest, at least on stream a few days ago, he will be available come, you know, his plan is anyway to come back after minor or after Major 1 at the end of January in Madrid. I think that'll be a similar plan for the likes of iLLeY, who will probably think, okay, probably coming into the Pro League before Major 1 isn't going to happen. And even that's, I think, what Huke said as well when he was joining OpTic. He was like, yeah, I didn't expect to be coming back in until after Major 1. After Major 1, teams will look to make changes. That's when the likely possibilities will be there. But even for Pred, for example, it's not like he's going to be coming back in mid-stage as it stands. So, you know, there's obviously other names that iLLeY, among others, would be competing with in that circumstance. Ravens are one of the teams, based on their early scrim results this season, that I was a bit concerned about, whether they might have to pull the trigger on a change relatively quickly. As it turned out when the league started, the scrim results had seemingly no bearing on how they actually played in the proper games. And then yesterday, again, we saw that they played a couple of challengers teams and were 2 to 14 map count against those two teams respectively, which is not pretty at all, but maybe they won't care if their CDL results continue as they are. So, does scrims not matter? Sure, maybe, but I don't think it's quite as clear as that, because generally the teams, especially down the line in a season, that are doing well in scrims, they tend to be executing in the matches as well. There are a few exceptions to this, but generally scrims are of course a metric, at least if the teams are trying to win the scrim, rather than trying to practice breaking or practice a rotation or whatever. But there's some debate on whether they actually do that or not. This was a pretty interesting clip here from Tej, of course, talking about the Ravens, when Shotzzy and Tej were discussing some of the problems in the game right now, why we need Ninja to be fully silent, in my opinion. But let's talk about some of the scrims that happened yesterday. So as Temp says, CTE Nation scrims going down, the team scrims were coming through, and this, of course, was a massive result from a couple of weeks ago now, when Ravens 3-0'd FaZe in shocking fashion. And that's been a big question of the scene so far. What's going on with FaZe? How come this team that hadn't been 3-0'd in an online qualifier for 2 years got 3-0'd by the Ravens, of all teams, at least on paper. They lost to the Thieves the week before. They've started 1-3. They lost to Control to Falcons. I mean, how could you ever expect that to be the case over the last couple of years? So these were, as No Muffin puts out, the scrim results from yesterday. Now, I'm sure some of the pro teams aren't so happy that these scrim results are out there and these guys are streaming, but it is what it is. If you want to get some practice in against some good challenger teams, a lot of those guys are going to broadcast it because, you know, they're trying to make some bread, and fair play to them. So we'll talk about FaZe in a second. FaZe, of course, had the best result of these three teams, but it's still not a good result, I would say, by any means, especially where FaZe usually are from a scrim perspective. Like Mack used to track the numbers. They didn't lose a scrim in like 3 years, or their map count in scrims was like just absurdly good. And that's with any iteration of their team. Arcetes when he was there, Slash when he was there, Drazah when he was there last year. But yeah, for some reason this year, FaZe are not looking so good right now, and genuinely to the FaZe fans out there, I would wonder your opinion on the question of, are FaZe going to win anything this year? Is there concern in the FaZe fan base that FaZe are legitimately not going to be good at this game, or is it all like, you know what, it's early days? And I'm not honestly sure where I sit on this. I don't really know, because part of me is like, oh, FaZe, you know, they're going to come good, they're going to figure it out, they're going to go back to just absolutely crushing people, and I think there will be series like that. But, you know, even great teams, they can falter, they can need changes, and I feel like it is inevitable that the trio have to break up at some point. Like, you know, at some point in any sports career, whatever, like it just becomes, for whatever reason, untenable to stay together. That may not be now, that may not be ever, that may be in 5 years' time. But this seems to be the closest that FaZe have ever been, based on their performance so far this season, to, if they don't win anything this year, to might have to make wholesale changes to the way things are going. We'll see more on FaZe in a second. Firstly though, Cloud9, because this team has been under pressure, to some great extent really by the fan base, right? Because they've not performed so far this season. Simp has been one of the worst players in the entire league, shockingly enough. How's the chemistry going? Is it all about their servers that they were struggling with at the start of the season? Maybe. But look, they've played Exceed, DiamondCon, Dylan, Rex, and Yuli. Solid players that have been in and around the league before. But look, Cloud9, on paper, they wanted to go into this season as the 4th best team, trying to be better, but on paper, Cloud9 were trying to say, okay, FaZe, Thieves, OpTic, fair enough. We're going to be 4th best. They were 4th best by a landslide at the K-Sun Invitational tournament that happened on the first time we really saw Black Ops 6 be played. And then since the season has started, they've not really been anywhere close. Now, we don't have like the numbers to see if a certain player was getting fried or not, but what we do have is the overall numbers in terms of the results. And losing Volt, 250, 192, the Skyline was very close, but the Hassy and the Protocol, like, these are concerning numbers. I mean, Cloud9 getting 130 point clubs, nearly getting 100 point clubs on the Protocol by, you know, what is, for all intents and purposes, a Challengers team, isn't a good look. And Surge, not in a massively dissimilar position. They played the Omit team, that's Neptune, Fellow, Craze, and Lunas. Again, players that have been in and around the league. Obviously, Neptune was around a while ago. Fellow was in the league last year. Lunas was in conversations, I think, to join the Minnesota Rocker. Craze has been around, but still, it's a Challengers team. It's not the level of, theoretically, Abuzah and 04 and those guys that have done very well, of course, with Hicksy and Nastie along for the ride as well. They played 7 maps, including 2 controls. They didn't even bother with the Protocol control, pretty funny. But, you know, they won Surge, the Vault, 250, 177. They then lost all the other maps. Now, these were a little bit more competitive, 177, for example, the Hacienda, and then the controls were kind of close. But still, that's a 5-2 result for Omid against Surge. And maybe Omid are, you know, the best players on the planet right now, and maybe FaZe have done a great job drawing with them 3-3, and these were only the hard points. But of course, again, the numbers here are pretty interesting, because you got to understand that FaZe just don't lose scrims. They certainly don't lose scrims to teams that they should be beating. Like, it just doesn't happen. It's the way that FaZe have gone about things. And obviously, as we said yesterday when we talked about the Ravens scrims, there's always some debate on, well, are they really trying? Not trying precisely, but, you know, do they care about winning so much? Is it about the learning or whatever? And I get that. But equally, there can't be any enjoyment about losing 250 to 160 to a Challengers team on Vault. Now, to be fair to FaZe, they did get some good wins. 250, 150 on Skyline, 250, 101 on the Protocol, and they won the red card as well. But, of course, the most notable thing here really is that they played Hacienda twice. They played it once, they lost 250, 225, and then presumably someone wanted to play it again. And then the next time they played it, they lost even worse, 251-33. Like, you know, these are numbers that, sure, it's understandable that FaZe are occasionally going to lose a CDL match and even a scrim by a certain number. But it's just like, FaZe very rarely against teams they should be beating are getting less than 200 points. So, you know, it's scrims, it's practice, we're talking about practice, I get it. But it's not like these results are massively shocking. I mean, Surge have been pretty up and down in the CDL. It's mainly been a lot of their search and destroys, you know, game 5s and stuff that have, you know, that's where they've gone the distance in series, and whether that's worked or not is a question. Cloud9 have been pretty bad so far. So these numbers are definitely surprising, but they're not entirely shocking that FaZe is, you know, maybe having a harder time. And of course, there is still a question, and an understandable question, on, okay, does it really matter how hard are the teams trying? But I know there's been talk about this from JP and others over the last couple of weeks, that the teams, generally speaking, they may try things on the break-offs in terms of whether they're trying to win the scrim, whether they're trying to practice things. At this point in the game's life cycle, I would say the vast majority of teams are not really trying to learn any specifics. They're just trying to play the game and win. Now, the break-off in the hard points, they may try some new things. That's where there might be some experimentation involved. But after that, the teams are, generally speaking, just trying to win the game. That, I believe, is JP's perspective. Now, you know, I'm not sure necessarily that the coaches of certain teams know everything about what every other team is doing, but the point still stands that I think we can take these results with a bit of a pinch of salt. It's practice, but, you know, within reason, these teams will be trying to win those maps, especially if you're a team like FaZe and are trying to get some confidence up, I suppose. Now, of course, Simp even said it, I think it was Simp anyway, who said, our practice has been very good, it's just translating that into the games. And, but like, every team says their practice has been good, and these type of results are not what we'd see from FaZe in previous years. So I think that's the question, right? FaZe are going to go, I mean, we looked at OpTic earlier today, let's have a look at FaZe real quick as well to see their upcoming games, because they play the minor, of course. Their first round at the minor is going to be up against Miami Heretics. They've got to win that to even get the chance to play Thieves in the second round, and their final 3 games are Rocker, Boston, and then Cloud9. So all games that they should be winning. They're currently 1-3, though, in their qualifiers, so in order to get a comfortable winners bracket seed, they will need to win all of those games, and those are games that I would expect them to win. But even their search and destroy hasn't looked good enough for me to confidently say they're going to beat Boston in 5, or even in 3, or whatever. And that, I think, is where the concerns lie here. So for FaZe, it's a very interesting situation, especially because we believe that they were quite close to breaking up in the off-season, well, before they won EWC in Riyadh. Cellium has apparently said to Benjay, maybe some others, that he thought he was getting dropped after the World Championship. They came top 6 at Champs, they went to Riyadh, they won the tournament, they decided to stick it out. But in those weeks before Riyadh, things were maybe somewhat in the air as to whether they would actually stick it out or not, and I think that is the question for FaZe, because we've seen this happen in the past. For example, when OpTic, they'd broken up. Now, they actually broke up. I'm talking about when Scump, of course, was on holiday in Hawaii or whatever. Formal called him up and say, look, you don't want to be dropping Dashy, you don't want to be dropping iLLeY, and they decided to run it back going into Modern Warfare 2 after the Vanguard year. That, of course, turned out to be a relatively major mistake, but look, they broke up their roster, they dropped iLLeY, they got rid of Dashy, then they brought them both back in. But of course, with that situation, the wounds had been made, and maybe they were, you know, painted over to some degree, but as soon as things went wrong for that team in December, January, they just blew it up. So I think that's the question for FaZe, is that, well, if they were pretty close to doing something before they won Saudi Arabia, if they start the season poorly, you know, will it not be long before they decide to do something? Now, I don't think Cellium would be the man to go, but yeah, intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
I swear there's some, like, I don't want Daddy, like, most of the time, but, like, I swear there's some teams, like, alright, bro, they're already sounding my shit.
Like, for example, like, Toronto...
Yeah, wait. Bro, this guy's complaining about getting sounded. He doesn't use fucking dead silence.
Bro, against most of the teams in the league, I'm telling you, I could fucking not run it, and I don't get sounded.
Yeah, against me, I promise you, you gotta run it. I'm just gonna be honest. Against me, I promise you. Against me.
Is FaZe sounding you?
No, I'm actually watching.
Who's sounding you?
I sound loud as fuck on your shit, bro.
Yeah, he's probably.
Were you playing on your one you play matches on?
You're probably like, holy fuck, you read that?
Yo, bro, I'm just like, this guy's peeking now. Like, what the fuck? Like.